What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me have some more... Wait a minute. My book is gone. The reason my book is gone is because I have two versions of this avatar, one without the book and one with the book. And unfortunately, I guess I accidentally selected my non-book avatar. Maybe for a few stories, we're just gonna be bookless for a little bit. Look at that! I have both my hands for the first time. Probably shouldn't be so touchy-feely, but I mean, I have the hands. I have to use them. Anyway, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. I'm gonna pretend I have a book in my hand still. One of my players disrespected the table so hard that I'm considering kicking him. We're in the middle of a party warlock character arc. Literally next session we'll be fighting his patron, a kraken. So currently he is the only player who is absolutely necessary and who the game cannot run without. So the day comes. I send out a poll on our Discord asking who will be there, who will be late, and who will be missing, etc. His answer first, mere seconds after the poll posted, and he marked that he'll be there on time. Everyone gathers. A couple of us, myself included, are in a bad mental health spot, and playing the game could really pick us up for the rest of the week. Oh my god, I can relate with that so badly. By the end of September, I finally had a moment where there was nothing much going on, but I still felt really sick and just not well. And a buddy of mine was like, hey, do you think I can run this one thing that I wanted to do? I want to visit the humble folk in our game, maybe see if I can interact with them. I immediately was like, bet, I'm doing it right now. I can't sleep anyway, pump out the maps, get the session set up, get some sort of storyline, get them to do something, and the next day we ran it. I desperately needed something, dude. D&D is more than just a fun hobby, it's like an escape for me. It's escapism. While D&D can fix all your problems, it can be a huge boon, a huge boon in dealing with your mental health issues by escaping them for a little bit into a fantasy world. Now for me injecting my personal issues, let's go ahead and get to the story. Two of my players are parents, and they left their child's birthday party early in order to be there on time. Grandparents took over and the kid's only 2, she didn't even notice. The Kraken sheet has been tweaked, the map is ready. I found a metal version of the Kraken theme from Pirates of the Caribbean. We had snacks, we had dice, we were ready. Except our warlock is nowhere to be found. He was texted multiple times by multiple people, he was called, no answer. After we sat and waited for him for over an hour and a half, I regretfully released my friends to go back to their evenings. Almost 2 hours after the game was meant to begin, he texted the group, hey sorry, I left my house without my phone. All that prep work, all the people making the time in order to attend this session specifically, even putting off their parental duties for a tiny little bit just to play in a fantasy game, and for the player that's kind of important to this specific story arc, just as a no-show. Doesn't say anything, doesn't even remind people like, hey, I'm gonna be a little late, or hey, I'm gonna be very late, or even just say people, hey, something else came up, I literally can't attend. Until eventually they respond and say, Dewey, I left my phone in my house, lol. Which I gotta be honest, I have a couple of questions. One, first of all, did you forget the session was happening that kind of needed your character to be there? And second of all, why isn't your first text message is, oh my god, I'm so sorry guys, please forgive me, I messed up. Like seriously, if you made a mistake like this, you should probably apologize to your party members for literally setting everything up from the maps to the planning to putting time off just to attend a session that has a sole focus on your character and you know where to be found. No further apologies, no acknowledgement of the fact that the session was cancelled because of him. After making sure some cooler heads than mine reviewed my text before I sent it, I told him that I felt extremely disrespected by such a dismissive display towards everyone's time, effort, and sacrifice, especially during his own arc, and that this won't be tolerated a second time. And he just texted me back after almost a full day that he didn't think an apology would help. I am freaking livid, Reddit. If he doesn't show next session, I'm about to railroad his warlock getting pulled under and move on with the story for the sake of my players who actually care about it. I've never felt so slapped in the face. Screw all the prep to give him a fun story, I guess. That is honestly heartbreaking. I'm sorry, DM. And I'm sorry to the players that literally put off time just to attend the session with the player that's supposed to be there being a complete no-show. but I do have some questions for the sake of context, if you will. When you and the player agreed to have this specific session, the story arc for the Warlock character, did they know that this session specifically, this session today, was gonna be their story arc session? Were they informed ahead of time? Because I'm not saying that's a possibility, but there could be a possibility that maybe there might have been a miscommunication along the lines somewhere, and maybe the player didn't understand that the presence in the session is kind of monumental and kind of important. Could there be a misunderstanding? Possibly, there's always a chance, but I mean, the player did RSVP to the post really quickly to say yes, they'll indeed be there, so they gotta put themselves in a spot where they're confirming they will be there. So therefore, the planning can properly happen for said player to feel special, to have a little bit of spotlight on their character for a tiny bit. Though I gotta be honest, I do have a concern about the player not choosing to apologize, and actually in fact saying that they don't think an apology would help. Yeah, if you don't communicate the fact that you're not gonna be there, and that ruins everyone's plans and everyone's whole schedule, yeah, you should probably apologize. To say that I don't think an apology will help, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm reading too hard into this or something, but it kind of feels like this player doesn't want to be held responsible or doesn't want to have any responsibility over their actions and say that, well, I don't think an apology would help, so I'm not gonna apologize for my actions. Yeah, no, you still should apologize for the actions, especially if you've done something crappy like that. The entire session is being planned and put together so that your character can feel super extra special in the storyline that people are putting together, and people are putting out their time and planning and everything to make you and your character feel special and to feel like you participate in this great world that you're telling with your friends. But he's doing the one responsible thing, just grabbing your phone with you if you're going to be heading out to communicate with them about this stuff, like, you know, why you're going to be late. The least you could do is apologize, because everything was planned for you, and now everyone's time and everyone's planning has to be cancelled because you didn't communicate the fact that you're going to be late, or God forbid you forgot the session was even happening in the first place. The only other thing I can recommend for the future is maybe plan for some contingency plans, not for every session of course, but maybe have like a backup session of like doing side quests to gather magical items or currency or meet wacky characters and stuff. That might be a good thing to do, just in case somebody's a no-show for the future. But if the situation continues happening with this specific player, then you found yourself a problem player, and you need to do the right thing and just ask him to just not attend sessions anymore. Simple as that. Anyway, sorry to ramble like this. I'm just gonna go ahead and get to the next story for today. GM attempts to force my character into partaking in undead snuggles. Yes, undead snuggles. We're gonna go with that because I don't think YouTube will allow me to say the full word. Sorry I have to use kid gloves, but here on YouTube we can have fun. Anyway, let's continue. Hey everyone, I wanted to share my first experience with tabletop RPGs, which was with Vampire the Masquerade 3rd edition. Of course, it's Vampire the Masquerade. I mean, RPG horror stories happen everywhere, but I feel like Vampire the Masquerade has a specific type of stories that just go, just have that little touch, you know, they have a little bit of that je ne sais quoi. Is that the right word I'm using? I don't know. You know what I mean though, they have a specific flair to it. Let's get to it. This was actually my first time ever playing a tabletop RPG, and it was an online game through Discord. I really enjoyed the system and found it quite intriguing. I got introduced to the group through a mutual friend I haven't spoken to in a while, who was a player in the game. I created Mokavian, a vampire clan known for being insane. My character had a thirst for power as part of their archetype. In the first session, it was just me and the GM, who introduced me to the setting, and I liked it. However, in the second session, a new player joined, not my friend, but he was listening in. We were on a boat talking to a high-ranking vampire named Jack Sparrow. He was going to give us a job, but while we were chatting, a woman arrived who was describing as being in sort of hypnotic state. Jim explained that this was common on the boat to have humans feed the vampires, which was more flavorful than just drinking from blood bags. He told me to try her out, so my character bit her neck and started feeding. Then he described how the beast, a voice in every vampire's head that pushes them towards acts that go against their humanity, was influencing me. The beast compelled me to drain the woman's blood and then inject my own blood into her, which would turn her into a vampire under my control. Creating new vampires without the Lord's permission is a crime punishable by death, so I had to spend humanity points to resist this violent impulse. This seemed to fit my character's thirst for power, though I don't recall if this is how humanity points actually worked in the system. And without spending the points, my character ended up draining all her blood until she died. What came next was troubling. The GM described my character, consumed by the beast, taking her to a room where I could eat her. In my language, this could imply both cannibalism and sexual acts. Jack Sparrow, the NPC also controlled by the GM, grabbed my wrist to persuade me to stop, but my character still took her to the room. Felt incredibly frustrating and confusing, especially since the GM had been pushing me towards this in the first place. Wait, hold on a second, hold on. So let me just get this straight. So this beast, can somebody tell me that play Vampire the Masquerade if the beast can just hijack all bodily control for like a character, or is this like a normal thing to do, or is it just something that this GM or storyteller, I guess, is just pulling out of their ass for no reason just to try to set up some sort of a thing? I really should read up the rules for Vampire the Masquerade and try to get some sort of experience for it. Maybe run like a test game with some friends. I don't know. Anyway, I felt extremely uncomfortable but didn't speak up immediately. In the room, the beast told me again to eat her, which I interpreted as sexual act. Feeling very uneasy, I first described my character biting her finger as a compromise. However, the beast continued to push, making it clear that the act was meant to be sexual. Despite being deeply uncomfortable, I eventually stated that I wouldn't commit undead snuggles, obviously. Had to spend more humanity and even blood points trying to resist the impulse, and ultimately left her body in the room. I don't know if vampires are supposed to be necessarily like Twilight vampires, where they're like really pretty and sparkly, or like classic vampires of like, I am Dracula, I want to suck your blood, or like, I don't know any other relevant vampire medium to like use as an example, but like, imagine this on a scale of Dracula to Twilight vampire. I'm assuming that like somewhere down the middle, and yeah, they're probably eternal, they probably can have pretty features and everything, but I don't think Vampire the Masquerade is all sexual, is it? Is it? Actually, I have no idea. From what I understand, well, Vampire the Masquerade is the whole part of this masquerade. You're trying to kind of peruse around and try not to reveal your true vampiric identity, while also aligning yourselves with different factions and kind of playing the social politics game. Unless I completely misunderstood Vampire the Masquerade, I don't think it's full sexual. It could probably have some sexy themes like sexy vampires and stuff. But this, eating the unalive people, I think that's kind of pushing boundaries, I would say. And the fact that this DM is just pushing onto the player without even knowing the player's into that sort of thing is just, I don't know, it's really gross actually. I was deeply unsettled, but was too shy at the time to complain. The rest of the session involved me and the other player fighting Jack Sparrow to prove our worth. After the session, I spoke with my friend who agreed that the content was too heavy and unnecessary. The campaign ended there, and I left the RPG group and didn't speak to them again. This happened in 2020, at the start of the pandemic. By 2022, I gave tabletop RPGs another chance, but had no desire to return to Vampire the Masquerade. I played D&D in campaigns like Tomb of Annihilation and Minds of Phandelver with a new group of friends, and they were all great. Since then, I've been passionate about RPGs and have played in several groups and campaigns. However, before joining any new groups, I make it a point to clearly state that topics I'm uncomfortable with, especially any form of sexual abuse. It was a terrible experience for my first RPG, but I moved past the trauma thankfully. I feel like that grants all of us insight on the kind of things to avoid, and especially the last part about talking and communicating about the do's and don'ts and being out in the open about your expectations on a game and what kind of things you'd rather avoid, I think are perfectly valid and good things to do. At the end of the day, TTRPGs require communication to even function in the first place. It's not a video game where just AI does and takes care of everything on its own. You need to communicate with your players need to communicate with your DM, players need to communicate with each other, and so on and so forth in order to create an inviting and pleasant environment that everybody can have fun with. Also, something from me to you, never be afraid to complain if you find some sort of an issue or concern in a thing. I've been on a game where I haven't complained for a very, very long time in my own RPG horror story that I covered before, and I gotta let you know, it's better to complain early on and talk about stuff, especially if it's kind of a problem, than just disregard it as maybe it's part of the game. Because after a while you realize things end up festering into something a little bit worse, and at that point your nihilism may eventually drive you to just, I don't know, resentment and just not being happy, not being satisfied, maybe the entire experience just being soured in the first place. Thankfully that didn't happen for me. I just took the experience that I had and made my own place. And I have fun playing D&D with my friends now, which is really nice. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.